Hi everyone, this is Zoph. You are watching Simply SCAdian, no title required. I am going to hand things over to my fabulous co-host Lucas. Take it away, Lucas.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Simply SCAdian, no title required. As always, our mission is to bring you people from throughout the known world who are exceptional in their breadth of knowledge of all things SCA. Again, we bring you people that are great and very knowledgeable at fighting, at fencing, at archery, at crafts, at A&S, at Bardic, all the things. So we want to know who those people are. Now, the only stipulation is this: we love our people with peerages, we love our people with titles and whatnot, but this is for the regular folks. All right. We want to highlight some of those people who may not have achieved that peerage yet, who may be on the road to that yet, or maybe it's just not their thing and they love the SCA at the level that they play at. But their commonality is their breadth of knowledge. We should be talking to these people more. So, this is a forum for that. As always, the mission to you is who should we be talking to? Who are the people in your corner of the known world that you think are extremely knowledgeable, but maybe just haven't achieved that level yet? And we haven't heard from them because of that. Give them to us, bring them to us. Is it you? So go to the Facebook page if you can, turn us on to who that person might be, fill out the form, just drop us a note. However, you want to do it, we would love to talk to those people. Today, we have a very special guest. I'm very interested in this. We have Patraic Mac Domnaill with us today, who mundanely is a reporter. All right. And his first experience with the SCA was watching a field battle at Penzig, which I think is a common thing for a lot of us. A lot of us came to Penzig on a friend's word, saw this craziness, and was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. He worked on it as a feature story and later turned that into a book you might be familiar with, The Knights Next Door, which is being highlighted right below me right there. So, Patraic, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So, how did you find the SCA?
So, um, so, so this was 1997, and I started dating someone who I've been living with for the last several years, and she had been a part of the SCA and a few other sort of related groups for several years. And within the first couple of months, I kept hearing friends talking about Penzic, 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 Penzic. Are you going to Penzic? Last Penzic this, Penzic that. And at a certain point, I said, "What is this?" And I had people explain it to me. And um, at the time, I was working as a reporter for the Plain Dealer, the main newspaper here in Cleveland, Ohio. And I thought, well, I'd like to see what it is. And I think that it's an interesting, unusual thing, and it could be a good feature story. So I made arrangements to come down for a day. And this was at a time when Penzic was very different than today, where you could go for just the final weekend. Um, like this is not allowed at all anymore. And by the final Saturday, everything's wrapping up and people are leaving. But Field Battle and Great Court were all on the final Saturday at Penzic at the time. So I drove down from Cleveland on Saturday morning, arrived just in time to troll in, got walked out to the battlefield, and watched the field battle happen. And that was within my first hour of ever seeing anything of an SCA event ever. And I was pretty amazed at the scope of it, the passion behind it, the numbers of people involved, the amount of time and care that people put into it, and that like never would have occurred to me that it would be such a big deal. That, I always thought of things like this as a little fringe group that had a few people doing it and not that involved. And suddenly I was really amazed by the scope of it and the sincerity and the effort. Um, so I kind of, spent the day going around, did a story, came back for the weekend to Penzic for a couple of years, um, then came down for a week. And again, I was really impressed with the amount of things and the amount of really interesting people. And I wanted to do a book, and I decided that, I may as well, this would be a really interesting group. So, like, there are a lot of stories here to tell. So let's give it a shot.
And in the book, you follow the tale of someone who was vying to be king.
Yes. So when I started the book, I had a couple of threads that I wanted to do through it. So one was kind of a participatory journalism kind of approach that I've read a bunch of other folks do. I mean, there's a guy named George Plimpton who did a couple of books, and he did some stories for Sports Illustrated where he was not an athlete at all, but went and tried out and did spring training and training camp of professional sports teams and wrote about what it was like. And I thought that could be that kind of approach would be interesting. I do a lot of traveling around the world, and I read a lot of travel logs. So people are like telling you about countries or new cultures through going into them for the first time and explaining them. So part of me envisioned doing this as like a travel log through the known world where I'd go and see a lot of things. But at the same time, um, there was who's now a Duke named Valharic, who was from our area. People knew him from when he was a teenager, having all the typical teenage foibles. And he had lost a crown final, and there was some controversy about it. But there were a bunch of folks who were like backers of him who didn't feel like it was the fairest thing. And so there's all this buzz, and I said, I should keep an eye on him, and I can kind of write about my own attempt to learn this group as I go, but also write about his attempt to come, to go and win crown. And he hadn't been knighted yet. And his attempt to reach the chivalry. So it turned out to be two interesting threads. And turns out that he won, and so they gave a whole extra little scope to things.
Yeah, I really loved because when you first started interviewing Valharic, you didn't know that he was going to, and this was real-time reporting that you were doing in your book.
Yes. So I mean, if if he hadn't won, I mean, maybe I would have done things a little differently. Like the travel log part, I was writing as the year was going on, and then I was following him. I mean, he also had some personal ups and downs over the course of that year, and there was a point during the year I'm like, not really my business. Like, need to not like talk about personal things with somebody when this book is really about this group and this pursuit. But he rebounded really, really, really well. And it turned into a really big success story. And I really enjoyed writing about how that all came about.
I mean, I'm going to say this. One of the criticisms that I hear about the SCA from new people is that it can be kind of gatekeepery. How did people react to you as an, for all intents and purposes, an outsider coming in, wanting to write about these things and wanting to like, you know what I mean, keep that log? Were people guarded? Did they open up? Did you have a mixed experience with that?
I didn't have much. I had very little trouble at all. So I think when I came to do a story about Penzic, there was a bit of there's a bit of control. Like the SCA doesn't want to just let anybody who says that they're a reporter show up and do whatever they want at Penzic. So they had very natural concerns about that. Um, I had met a lot of the people locally that I was going to be writing about, so it wasn't as big of a leap. Um, I mean, I also like reached understandings with folks very early on that I never wanted anything that happened off the cuff to be taken out of context. Like, I mean, it's about writing about what this group is and what this pursuit is like. And if somebody made a little individual mistake or said something that was a little off color or wrong, like things happen in the moment, and I really didn't want to make a big deal out of it. So, I think that was understood pretty quickly. Um, I had, I also just went to a whole bunch of events, and I I mean, I just walked around and talked to everybody, and just about everybody was happy to talk. They're either happy to pull aside at an event and talk for an hour, or set up times to talk to them later. Um, and my feeling all along was so I would write about things that people told me when they knew that I was a reporter. If we had an interview and they told me things, then I would write about them. But while SCA events are not public events, there are things that are public within the context of the SCA that you are doing publicly as your persona. If you do it at court, right? I would consider that to be fair game about this is what this group does. If you do it on the battlefield with a few hundred people watching you, that's sort of public. If you're saying it off the cuff in around a campfire in your camp, that's just a private thing and it's not my business. But I had no trouble whatsoever. People, I find that people who have something that they're passionate about, it's very easy to have them talk about it. You just, hey, I'm interested in this thing that you spend hours and hours and hours on, and this is your obsession. Please tell me about it. And water faucet comes wide open, and suddenly 2 hours have gone, and I've heard a lot of stories. And that was part of the appeal. That people had this passion that was pent up, and they wanted to talk about it. They wanted people to know about it.
So in the book, you talk about your attempt at fighting. Can you
Yes,
tell us a
yes.
little more about that?
Um, so yeah, so I mean, I've never really been a good athlete. I mean, I played little league and intramural sports and just never very good, but I figured I was going to give this a try and write about what the experience was like doing it. Um, I thought it was a lot of fun. I got to make some armor and I got to practice and I really enjoyed well, so I was not very good at all. Didn't have enough time to practice, not enough years to get very good at it. As one of the other people that I talked to for the book talked about their first Penzic fighting experience, they said I basically amounted to a speed bump. Um, and that's pretty much what I was. But the folks that I was working with through the house Darkyard were very, very, very welcoming. And I really liked the teamwork part of it. Like I really liked being part of like contributing whatever little thing I could to the team as like they're pursuing this thing. It was a lot of fun. Um, and couldn't pursue it further because of some personal health issues. Considered doing combat archery for a little while, but didn't make a whole lot of sense. But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So early on, what were the things that like as you started the experience, what were those like, wow, I didn't really know it was this involved. Do you know what I mean? Like, what were some of those aha moments right at the beginning?
So, well, I mean, it ranged from a lot of things. But so you'd hear people talk. All right, so I'd walk around the merchant area and there'd be people who'd be selling tablet weaving. And you'd start to ask them questions about it. And then they'd start making excuses about, oh, well, this is the modern and modern dyed stuff, and this is the stuff that was period dyed. And suddenly you start finding all these levels of things. They didn't just make a craft. They didn't just take lots of hours in order to do a craft. They tried to do it with a period method, and they made very big distinctions between which dye and which fiber would have been proper in period and which wasn't, and what was really real and what wasn't. And just in and of itself, that was a really interesting thing. That it's not just a little hobby that people just do, and not just crafting. It's also research and it's trying to figure things out. Um, you know, the the scribes that I would talk to, having discussions about what were they using as the medium in order to do their scribal work on. Are they using paper? What kind of paper? Are they using parchment? Which things are worth using parchment for, which aren't? What are the different kinds of paint and the inks that they would use, and just these conversations just started going round and around and around and getting deeper and deeper and deeper. You heard people talking about food, and you heard people talking about their garb, and this thing and that thing was this was period, and you heard people talking about sheep to shirt, and that was a new thing I'd never heard of before. And so, I mean, that was fascinating. So yeah, just I think you can just go to any, just sit down in the food court at Penzic, talk to a few random people, and suddenly, next thing you know, you've gone down a rabbit hole of how someone's really pursuing something with a passion that on the surface might look like pretty simple and might look like, you're doing a cool craft project, but has a whole bunch of layers beyond it.
I had a question and I don't remember what it was. Do you have a question?
Um, with well, with regards to the fighting, did you ever like you tried that as like the first like bring you in kind of thing? Did you branch out into any of the other areas? Have you worked on craft? Are you doing A&S work? Did you go into Bardic? Did you try any of those other things, or was it just like fighting and then kind of a general knowledge?
Yeah, so I mean, I dabbled in a lot of things while doing the book. Um, so I took a ton of classes when I was at Penzic and at Gulf Wars. Um, and I have through classes, I made shoes, I made a stained glass piece, I made an oil lamp, I made paper at one event, and I've considered wanting to do some of that on my own anyway. Um, I've done a little bit of the Middle Eastern drumming, um, and I still dabble with that a little bit. Um, None of them completely caught me that I pursue it a lot today. I mean, I still go to events and I'm mostly catching up with people that I know, and sometimes I'm selling the book, which is a great way because if I'm sitting in the merchants area, everyone comes through at least once, so I make sure I get to see everybody. Um, but No, I have not found a particular thing that like fuels my passion that drives me to keep pursuing it. Um, but I still very much appreciate what folks do.
So, in the modern world, you are a reporter. Have
Yes.
you ever done any work for the Penzic Independent?
I have not. Um, I, I mean, I've seen what they do. I think what they do is great. Um, but for the first few years, uh, I was doing my own, I was really doing my own reporting almost 24/7 at Penzic for the book. Between fighting and interviewing people and watching what was going on with Valharic and some other characters that I had my eye on, I didn't have time to do that at all. Um, I've considered doing some other kind of reporting about the SCA. Particularly like, one of the things I really considered when there was a big dispute about Cooper's Lake doing fracking. I considered doing some actual reporting on that, like maybe going down to one of the township board meetings to see how they handle that locally. But no, I think um, I either was pursuing the book or I felt like I needed a break.
Right. Yeah, it's our vacation. I don't want to do work when I'm
Yeah.
on vacation.
There are some other folks who are report who you know who have been reporters in real life who have done reporting for the Independent.
Yeah,
Um,
Julie Washington, who is Jalicia, who's co-hosted with me a couple times, does write for them.
yes,
Just a couple special articles. So yeah.
yeah. And uh, Liam St. Liam, who's no longer with us, but was from the East, worked mundanely as a reporter and did some work for the Independent.
Right.
Um, so yeah, there have been a few folks who've done stuff.
I'm never this popular on a Saturday afternoon. I'm so sorry, everybody. My phone is just going crazy. So where did you travel when you were preparing this book?
I did a ton of travel. So I did a whole bunch of mid-realm events since that's where I'm based. Um, I did an Atlantean University. I did let's see, I put together a list earlier. Yeah, I did an Atlantean University. I did Mid-Realm University that was actually in what's now North Shield. So that was all the way, that was in Milwaukee. I did Gulf Wars, which was my first time there, and I loved that event.
It's
I
a
did
great
Lily,
event. Yeah.
which
Hey, safe travels to everybody who's heading home.
I know. Well, I was realizing just the other day, I did a lot of the reporting for this book, and a lot of these events in 2001. So, it's 25 years ago today that I was traveling back from Gulf Wars. Um, and I did Lilies. I went out to Grand Outlandish. I did Great Western War. And one of the really fascinating trips was I did Double Wars in Drachenwald, which took a little bit of effort, and also went to see three different little local demo events by three different British reenactment groups.
Well, that was my next question. Lucas, do you have a question? Because I'm taking
No, no,
over.
no. Keep going. It's a good thread. So
So in your book, you do mention the other reenactment groups.
Yes,
You re mentioned the one in England and then the Regia Angelorum here in the
yes.
US. So tell us about the differences and the experiences you had with them.
Yeah, so there were three groups that I saw in Britain. One's called Britannia, which does um like Roman Brit, which would they consider to be around the closest guess we have for when a version of King Arthur actually existed. Um, and then Regia Anglorum, which does Dark Ages, Viking Saxon stuff. And then I saw a Roman reenactment group called the Ermine Street Guard. And I saw those all within a few days of each other in Britain. Um, they're interesting. It's a very different approach. I mean, it's very similar, the same kind of people. They all have different attempts to recreate and show off the Middle Ages than the SCA. Lots of similarities, lots of real differences. Um, so one of the big things about the SCA that makes it different from Ren fairs here is that everybody's participating. So there's no staff. No one's there to entertain you. It's all mixed together. And there, a lot of the things that they do is they get paid. They're often paid to come do demonstrations and put on battles for the public. And so they don't, they're not all showing up and spending a whole weekend or a week trying to behave somewhat in period. They have showtime and off time. And I mean, their
Yeah,
showtime
you
could
called
be,
it Wimples off and Wimples on.
yes, that was what they, yes, that's what they said to kind of be like lights, action, camera. It was like Wimples on, Wimples off. And yeah, and their version of authenticity is much higher. Like their baseline authenticity level, in terms of appearance and materials, is much higher than the SCA. Um, and they really take the appearance very, 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 very seriously. Um, in terms of like actually living it, not so much. In terms of the fighting, you can have real debates over which is more accurate. Their swords are all steel. They've got wooden shields that don't have rubber hoses around the edge, that have actual hide. They've got, you know, all their all of their garb has got to be colors either done by period dye or colors that can be achieved by period dye. Um, should be hand sewn or at least over sewn by hand before they even like let it on what is basically a set. Um, so the tents are all like very different. Um, so they take that really seriously, but like their approximations of how they handle fighting is very different. Um, I mean, they're using steel. It's not sharp, but they pull their blows. Everything is supposed to be a grazing thing, unless you know you're going to hit their wooden shield, in which case you whack away and send wood chips flying, so it makes a big show for the audience. Um, if you, I mean, you can't do blows to the head, so you've got a lot of people don't have any helmets, right? But like, so while they're sitting there saying, "Oh my God, you're not accurate at all. You've got all these grill, this grill in front of your face mask, and that wasn't period at all." And I'm like, "Yeah, but do you let anyone? Are you going to actually tell me that a Saxon spearman isn't going to stab somebody, stab somebody in the face?
In
Like,
the face,
like,
right?
are you really telling me that like you're not like these guys aren't going to hit somebody in the head, and you're saying you're more accurate?" Like, I mean, nobody can do it accurately because if you do, people die. Not doing that. So everybody makes different concessions in different ways and decides that different things are important. And, I don't think any one way is necessarily better than the other. I think that you just have to appreciate the trade-off you make. Um, but yeah, I was very amused by how some of them very much look down on how the SCA does fighting. And I'm
I,
like,
I,
have you
I,
ever hit anybody full power? No. Okay. Like, is it really competitive? Like, I guess it is in their own way. Um, but not the same.
right. I just want to throw out one of the quotes. I don't have the actual quote. But you were talking about Britannia and everybody was setting up their tents, and somebody set up their tent where they could have been sleeping where King Arthur himself slept. I really love that line that we don't get here in the US, but over there in Drachenwald, they are walking the lands where some of these battles actually did happen. What was that experience like for you?
So, that was really fascinating. You're confronted with it just being there, right? I mean, if you just start to think once you do reading about things and about places, you start seeing things on the maps and you start seeing things everywhere that, oh my God, this is from this and this is from that. In the mid realm, we have an Edmund of Hereford, one of the dukes. And when I was looking at the map of how to get places, like, oh, there's Hereford. Like, okay, that's kind of cool. Um, an event I did not get to, um, but would be great to go to someday is, they do recreations of the Battle of Hastings, and they do it right on the field.
There's some mid-realmers who've gone.
Yes. And that stuff really started to take off just a little bit before I finished the book. I think it's picked up a lot since I wrote it. If I were doing it again, that's probably the event that I would pick to go to. Um, where I did end up was not my original plan. My original plan was to go to a Drachenwald event held at an actual castle along the Rhine in Germany. But that event was the weekend after 9/11.
Ooh.
And yeah, so that trip never happened. And there was also a big, huge, multi-period reenactor event that was going to be held at just a big, huge site, I believe outside of London. So it was going to have World War II folks and have a whole bunch of different folks, but it was going to have a whole bunch of reenactment groups all in one place, which would have let me just one-stop shop, like a whole bunch of reenactment groups. That was also that same, then I was going to go to Germany, and that trip never happened. So this other one was something I set up the spring, summer after. I was really glad to have that chance.
Nice.
How did you vet the events you were going to go to? Did you like listen to people and just kind of decide on a whim, like, hey, that sounds great? Or did you set it up like this is a cross section now of what the SCA has to offer? I must hit these events. How did you process the whole sort of learning and the writing process?
Sure. Well, I did not. So I did not go into the year and say at the start, map out. I'm going to do all these things in order to make sure I cover the right cross section. That was a thing that was developing over the course of the year as I learned more and heard more about things. I mean, as I started the book, I mean, I didn't have a book contract. It's not like I said, "Oh, okay, this is really worth it," and these, this is the steps I'm going to take. I said, "Well, I think this is good. Let's explore it. Let's dive in and see what happens." And so I was, okay, fighting at Penzik. Okay, learn to fight, make armor, go fight at Penzik would be a kind of a cool through line to do. And I wanted to get to some other places, but that kind of developed as I went. Um, Gulf Wars worked out because some people up here were going to go down anyway, and I was able to tag along with them. Um, and once I did that, I started realizing, yeah, I really got to hit a bunch more places. Um, and the SCA website, I'm not sure what if it's still doing this. You listed a few of the major events. I mean, it listed Lilies and it listed Great Western War and it listed Penzik and Gulf Wars and it listed Estrella. And Estrella was too early in the year for me to make that leap. But I kept hearing about Lilies and I kept hearing about, I kept hearing about different places and said, I got to do it. Grand Outlandish was never in my mind until after hearing a bunch of people talk about it being an interesting place.
And tell us about that event. I don't think either of us have ever been.
No, that's New Mexico. Um, and I have to make sure I remember everything right, but I think, I mean, I remember, the the Clan Tinker was just starting to do a lot of stuff, a lot of their performances at Penzik. And they're from out there, and um, a couple of the um I think if I remember right, Raymond from Raymond's Quiet Press was based out of there. I think the Rolling Thunder drum folks were from out of there. And I just had a lot of people talking about how that was a neat event. And I mean, it was in a desert, you know, which is not a big deal if you live in that part of the country, but it is very different from when you grew up in New Hampshire and live in Ohio.
Just a question about that event. Do they try to work more desert locales into their period portrayal? I don't know another way to put it. Like, we do things like in Pensic, like woods battle and stuff like that. We're trying to be evocative of fighting in the woods and whatnot. Is there any kind of like, I don't know, Crusader-esque feel to like being in the desert, or is it just
I,
they kind of pay no never mind to that?
I don't remember that in particular. Um, a little while ago, and but I don't remember that being a dominant thing.
So what's next for you?
What's next? Don't have any big plans for next. Um, some people have said I should do another one. Not sure that I am. I had for the first couple of years, I thought that I should do something. I had a lot of material that I never used, um, that I thought deserved to see the light of day, but the right format to do it and the ability to do it didn't happen. Um, you know, part of me is interested in kind of following up what happened to people over time, how have they changed, how have things worked. Um, but I also, um, doing it was a lot of work. And I was going to events and then I was taking notes during the events. And then I was like sitting at the airports to go home from the events and writing a bunch of stuff, and then going home and going to work and then writing in the evening and then going to fight practice and then writing more the next night and then packing to go to the next event. And I burned out a little. Also, marketing the book burned me out a little. So now when I go to events, I mostly to see people. And I sell the book still, but I might go and sell one or two copies at an event. I don't care. I mostly get to visit people that way. I think I met a lot of really cool people, do interesting things, and I still really like to stay in touch with them.
So how
What
many
was the
copies of the book have you sold? Sorry, Lucas.
That's right.
Um, I have not checked in a while. I sold a few thousand,
Nice.
which is not a lot by most standards, but not too bad for a niche publication. I think I made my investment money back. I think it's probably about a wash. Um, so
Okay.
so yeah.
What's the overall reception been? How have people reacted to it?
Um, Good. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy with the reception. Um, I get I get a lot of good response from people who say that it's very good to give new people. And I strongly suggest it to new people because so you can go to a lot of events and talk to a lot of people around a campfire and they can fill you in on the history of things and how a lot of things work. That takes a little bit of time. I you know, I do believe my book can take a very new person and move them down the basic learning curve of what the group is, a little bit about its history, who some of the players were, can move you down that path really fast. And you'll learn a lot of the basics of a lot of the different pursuits within the SCA. And that's a good launching point for other things. Um, I have had a couple people who've given me very enthusiastic responses. Um, Somebody came up to me when I went to Gulf Wars a couple years after the book came out. Somebody came up to me, ran over to me, gave me a hug out of the blue, and thanked me profusely and said, "Now I gave it to my parents, and now they don't think I'm crazy." Um, so I was I felt really good about that one. That was one of the things that made it worthwhile. Um, I do think um, I do think folks who've been in the SCA for a while, um, they're you could probably get bored with parts of it quickly. Because you're hearing rehashes of things that you've known for 10 years. Um, but I also think that there's portions in there that even if you're a veteran of the SCA, there's there's stuff in there that you probably don't know or you haven't heard things directly from folks. I mean, I interviewed Diana Listmaker, who hosted the very first backyard party that started the SCA. There's a reprint of the actual invitation to people to come to that event that's in the book. I talked to the people that invented the flat snap. It's one of the basic fighting moves. I I got to interview when I was in Drachenwald. I got to interview a scribe who works out of her house, out of an old, like a 500-year-old building in France, and makes her own dye by picking plants. Um, I got to talk to the guy who was like the founder of the Callantyre Shield Wall. Like there are lots of people that were part of building things in the SCA that you hear about. I got to talk to the people that were the origin of them, and you get to hear a little bit from them directly about their story and why they did what they did. So I think there's some things in there for folks who are veterans in the SCA, but I mostly get good response as this is really good for new people.
Well, I am a 30 plus year veteran and I really love this book. I just Zoph plugs it. You handled the Michael. So the Midrealm a couple decades ago had a king who was new to the SCA, one crown, and just went crazy, basically. So to the point where his queen stepped down, all the retainers stepped away and they ended up having to get the police involved to get the crowns back and and then they removed him as king. And you handled that story really well. Somebody just posted on the Midrealm Facebook page, Forrester Cad fan posted the story of that. But you handled it really well in the book too. Just very matter of fact reporting about it. You know, there were no emotions involved, which I liked to just read the reality of what happened in that case.
Huh,
He had carved the gems, Lucas, out of the crown to try to sell them.
yeah, I
Okay.
mean, there's there's SCA is a big group. There's a lot of people, and in any group where there's a large number of people, just by nature of well, by human nature, there's a few things that will always go be off. And happens it will happen with any group that's large enough. Some things are off. And I think the way the group as a whole handles them is usually really good. And I mean, I'm well, there are lots of ways in which people, I mean, people within the group have fights amongst themselves about are things handled well or not. But I think that it's it's mostly a group of really good-hearted people who are trying to pursue the thing that they love and just want it to go well. And unfortunately, there are some bad there are bad actors like there are in any other group.
Right. So you still go to Penzic?
I do. I don't. I mean, sometimes I go for a week. Sometimes I go for just a couple days. But living in Cleveland, I'm close and I'm close. It's not like I live in New Mexico and have, you know, multiple days of driving or flights I have to do. I can drive down in the morning and drive home that night if I want. So,
Right.
I actually have a question about Penzing because it's I don't for those of you who haven't seen it, Amazon Prime did a show. There's a bunch of guys who travel the country doing strange things. And Penzing was actually their first episode. It's a 30-minute thing on Penzing, and they only do topside stuff. Like it's very structured. Now you said when you first came to do the reporting that they kind of steered you in the right direction. As somebody who loves the SCA and I do a lot of topside stuff and whatnot, I'm also a partier. Did they steer you away from the goings on of the bog or those kinds of things when you first started? Or
they didn't directly, but I mean, when I came as a reporter to do that first day story, I mean, they wanted you gone by the end of the day. Like it wasn't like stay for 3 days and write about it. I
yeah,
mean, but I mean, as things went on, I mean, I was, I mean, I was, I got an SCA membership. I was learning to fight. I was participating. I showed up in garb. And so I really didn't go through the press offices for any of the other events. And for the two Penzics that I write about in the book, I mean, there's some stuff from, down around the lake. Um, I mean, there's part in there about the slave auction at Vlad's, which is, I think not a thing that the SCA would like written about, but,
nope.
you know, but it's just one thing that happened.
No
Um,
longer happens, by the way. That is a
yeah,
done deal. No one does that anymore.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, Penzic is a little bit, it's. I mean, I think from what I've seen, and it's been a long time since I've been there, Gulf Wars is probably the best SCA event. And Penzic is a combination SCA event with a little bit of Burning Man thrown in. And it's not exactly what the SCA wants to promote, but you know, I don't know. It's what happens on the fringes is not really the thing that I really wanted to write about anyway. There's lots of other things going on that was the main focus of the event. So,
I
oh,
just wondered because you know just because I know from that special that they particularly told those gentlemen not to take cameras anywhere else, but here. So I just wondered. That's all. Thank you.
So, I think this is our last question, but what was it like when you saw your first battle? What were your thoughts? What was that experience for you?
um, I mean, so a couple things. I People kept telling me it was big, and while I sort of believed them, I didn't really believe them. Um, but seeing a few hundred people on a side running at each other, I mean, it's Braveheart, which had come out fairly recently. Um, I mean, I'm just the mass of people and the energy that was involved and the work that was involved. And I mean, It's I've been very lucky. I've been able to travel to more than 20 different countries and seen a lot of things. And seeing that for the first time is on a short list of like spectacles. Um, and if you've been in the SCA a while and you've seen a lot of them, and now I'm like no longer amazed by them because I've seen 50 of them or 30 of them. Now they do like three each war. Um, no, I think it was an amazing spectacle. And again, I really was astounded at how much went into it. All those people with all that armor and all the flags and the banners and you know the shouting and the cheers and the energy that went into it. Um, I, I was dumbfounded.
Yeah. All right. Last question. What can the SCA do better?
Um, so in terms of the organization as a whole, I don't have a lot to really offer because I've been out of the loop on a lot of those things for a while. But a couple of patterns that I think I noticed when I was doing the book about how individual people look at things and like lessons I think that people could really take. Um, I found I think a lot of people get very focused on their own kingdom, their own barony in their own kingdom, and the politics and structure within those things and the exact ways that those work. But I think people should feel much more willing to take advantage of things that other kingdoms are doing. I think so. Cleveland is very close to Ethelmark, and I think some folks from my area would sometimes go to Ethelmark for maybe Ice Dragon if they wanted to enter something in their ANS competition, and of course people would go down to Ethelmark War Practice, which is basically Penzic Light, but not hardly ever any of the other events. It's kind of like your world is the kingdom, and you don't really cross over very much. And I'm not sure why. I, as an outsider, I came in thinking, oh well, you've got all these events in all these different places, and what's close? And so I think people should do that more. I think there are people. Cleflin's had a big baronial change around the time I was doing the book. And I went to there were interviews of baronial candidates, and I went to those interviews, and all of them were talking about, oh, this barony's awesome. We do we do this really well. We do that really well. And I said, how many other baronial meetings have you been to in other baronies? And people looked at me dumbfounded. I'm like, how do you know you're better? Like, how do you really know that you're anything different? Like, have you really gone and compared? I think people really should learn best practices from other folks around the SCA. I mean, one of the big lessons I always felt too about the SCA is people often say somebody oughta, but they really ought to do this differently. And there is no the thing about the SCA is there is no they. There's no somebody who oughta. You either do it or you don't. And anybody can step up and do it. And I also really feel like there's a lot of debates about authenticity in the SCA, and I think it's very easy for people to focus on the thing that's their pursuit within the SCA and look down on people who don't do their thing well, that they may be doing something else really well. Um, I've heard people who were like really focused on like what fabric is your garb and stitching and walking around with Coke cans at Penzic. And I'm like, you're picking a thing, but you're skipping others. And I think that you can be very worried about the thing that is your passion and doing it right, and look and not appreciate folks doing things really well in other areas. And I think everybody cuts corners in some way. It just doesn't always line up with which is your big thing.
Okay.
Real quick, do you want to plug the book? Where can we find it? Where can we pick it up? Where can we get it?
Sure. I mean, I'm sometimes at events and can sell it, and I'm happy to sign it for you, but that's not that frequent anymore. But it's on Amazon. It's been on Amazon since the start. And you can always get it there.
I got mine on Thrift Books. So there you go.
I did look it up on Amazon while we were having this conversation as well, just in case. So, but yeah, it is there, everybody. So make sure you go and pick that up. Required, you heard it, required reading for Simply Scadian now. Okay.
Right.
There'll be a quiz. There'll be a quiz next class. Okay.
All right,
All
you've
right.
been watching Simply Scadian, no title required with the author and Scadian Patrick O'Donnell. See you guys in 2 weeks.